to participate in the Ottawa-led clinical trial of immunoablation and autologous stem cell transplantation for treatment of multiple sclerosis, MS. This procedure is now considered a standard of care for individuals with very active multiple sclerosis, thanks in large part to this pioneering study that was led by Drs. Harry Atkins and Mark Friedman right here at the OHRI. John has come to us all the way from Disneyland. He's cut short his vacation, showing really his commitment to tell his story to us. He is happily married and has a 9-year-old daughter who are, I think, still in Disneyland. So please join me in welcoming to the stage John Chafe.
Hi there. Thank you. I'm one of the most stubborn people you ever will meet. Sorry, I just kind of fibbed there. I'm one of the most stubborn people with myself that you ever will meet. But I think that everyone with multiple sclerosis shares that same trait. We need to be. It happens when you slowly lose your abilities one after another, even simple abilities that you once took for granted. Simple things like walking to the mailbox, picking up your daughter, or dancing with your wife. But let me tell you a bit of my story. I'm now 51 years old and have officially spent half of my life living with MS. During the first half of my life, I used to sail and windsurf, run, climb, and mountain bike. I speed skated. I held 4 provincial records. But my favorite thing was downhill skiing. I taught and I coached. After university, I was hired into branch management at a bank in 1993. My first posting was in Thunder Bay. And at the end of my training, I was sent to Kenora. But that's where my MS journey begins. I had to delay that move because my eyes were seriously clogged and I couldn't drive. A family doctor told me that I had the flu and gave me antibiotics. But my eyes stayed crossed for the whole next week. And because I didn't want to disappoint my new employer, I bought an eye patch and put it on my eye and drove the 5 hours to beautiful Kenora. In retrospect, that was my first exacerbation. The problem cleared up shortly after I got there, and I went on to enjoy that posting. Later that spring, while I was skiing at Montreal on a double black diamond run in the bumps, I bailed badly and had a spectacular yard sale. The problem was, though, I never used to fall. Apparently, I had the look of pure panic in my eyes as I flew through the air. Then and there, I knew something was wrong. I mentioned my falling and my crossed eyes to a good friend of mine who mentioned them to a friend of hers, who happened to be Dr. Heather McLean at the Ottawa Hospital. And the word that came back to me was that these symptoms sounded like signs of MS. Now by then, I'd been transferred back to Thunder Bay, where my GP sent me for an MRI. And after the MRI was done, I read the technician's comments, and they said all signs pointed to MS. So I called the MS clinic here in Ottawa, and I came down and met with Dr. Mark Friedman, who gave me more tests, including a spinal tap. So in 1995, he confirmed that I had MS. Now back to my stubbornness. I just didn't believe that I could ever get into rough shape. Things like MS were not supposed to happen to me. I refused to accept it, and being stubborn, I guess I still do. I asked Dr. Friedman if there were any trials underway because I was sure that a cure was right around the corner, given my refusal to accept the possibility of disability. He said there was one, and so he put me on some kind of a frozen bovine cow brain study, which I just knew was off the wall enough to be the cure. Now, confident in the cure, I went on a cross-country rock climbing trip to Utah, Nevada, and California, all the while carrying around a portable freezer with my frozen cow brain cure inside. But as it turns out, that study was just a study, and it didn't prove to be my expected salvation. Now, after that drug failure, and a few more exacerbations, I started taking an interferon drug, and I accepted the fact that I would have to give myself needles every other day. The exacerbations didn't stop, even when I changed drugs. I was considered an interferon failure. And one day after I moved home to Ottawa, and on this very day that I had a regularly scheduled appointment with Dr. Friedman, I heard him on CBC talking about an experimental stem cell transplant study that he and Dr. Harold Atkins had designed in 2000 after they had noticed a patient with leukemia and MS had her MS stabilized after she had a transplant. Dr. Friedman said it was like pressing reboot on the immune system, and that I understood. Later that day at my appointment, I expressed my interest in the study, and he agreed to my candidacy, knowing the active lifestyle I once led and my willingness to take calculated risks. Then I spent the next year meeting over and over with Dr. Atkins, Dr. Friedman, and Marjorie Bowman as they tested my physical suitability and my mental acceptance of the risks. And yes, there were risks. They told me there was a 4% chance of death. Then I remember having a really serious talk with myself that this was major stuff I was getting myself into. I might die. I also remember one of the many doctors saying the words bedridden to me if I didn't have any kind of serious intervention soon. So I told doctors that I realized that I would never forgive myself if I didn't try, as my condition continued to deteriorate. So I became the second patient in Canada and the world to have this bone marrow transplant for MS. Now, I've been advised that with all the chemotherapy, I would likely lose my hair and probably become infertile too. But this wasn't really a big deal to me because having kids was the furthest thing from my mind at that time, and I thought I looked cool as a bald guy with sunglasses and a goatee. So to have some fun before I took the risks, I had a head shaving party with a few friends. My longest friend and I both had our heads shaved. Beer and clippers, what a blast. In November of 2001, the whole transplant process really started moving as a smaller dose of chemotherapy was given to me to stimulate the stem cells into my bloodstream. A bag of them was collected and taken away to be cleansed of any traces of MS. In December, I was brought in for the main event. I was given huge doses of chemo, and I started getting weaker and weaker. Death warmed over is what I think I said. After the chemotherapy was done and my immune system was gone, I was reinfused with my cleansed stem cells. I remember that as soon as the IV was taken out, I hobbled quickly to the bathroom and threw up because I think my body was adjusting to this new operating system that had just been installed. After several days of getting strong in the hospital, and after some pleading with Dr. Atkins, he released me on Christmas Eve of 2001. Now I know that release is not the proper term, but at that point in time, it sure felt like it suited the situation. After almost 3 years after my transplant, I met an amazing woman named Patricia, and I took her for our first date on my scooter because my walking strength still hadn't come back yet. We got along fabulously, and I proposed 6 months later, and we were married in 2005. A few years later, I woke up with a start in the middle of the night as I realized that I'd been suffering from that famed chemo brain and had completely forgotten that I'd banked some sperm a few years earlier. So I just had to wake her up in the middle of the night to tell her. And thankfully that turned to be okay because our daughter ended up being born in 2010. Now, funny thing with having a child, as she started moving more, I started moving more. She became my personal trainer. She didn't care that I had MS. My confidence and physical abilities started returning. I heard about the Canadian Association of Disabled Skiing. I joined that, and I was absolutely terrible at first because I didn't have the strength. In fact, my volunteers used to carry down a portable chair down the bunny hill for me to sit on as I was coming down the hill. But remember, I'm stubborn. I kept doing it, and today I can ski on expert runs independently for hours without riggers for balance. Now, being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis completely changed and upended my life. All signs pointed to a life of permanent and worsening disability. But it was the brilliant research that everyone here does that has given me the ability to experience a better life. I am a successful example of all of your work. Now today, almost 20 years since my transplant, my stubbornness is still alive and well, and I continue to push and challenge myself in everything I do without having the daily worries that my disability will get worse. I dance with my wife, I ski and swim with my daughter, and thanks to the wonders of stubbornness, I have my driver's license back. I can even walk about 1 kilometer with only one cane, but I still use a cane or a scooter or a walker to get around quickly. Now, being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis completely changed and upended my life. Now, I haven't had any significant regeneration, but that wasn't the point of the study. The point of the study was to halt MS, and that has succeeded. But I'm still left with the damage that MS caused in only 7 years of active disability. I truly feel that medical science saved me and halted MS. In fact, if you go to the parking lot, you'll see my Subaru with a personalized license plate of bye-bye MS. Now, thanks to your research, I live well, I have a family, I drive again, and most amazingly, I ski those Black Diamond runs again. Thank you very much. I thank you very much. Pardon?
Oh, wow.
Okay, thank you.
John, thank you so much for sharing your life experience with all these young, bright, future researchers that really push and should put your research into context and how important it is of what you're doing. Your stubbornness and your perseverance will pay off. I'd now like to invite Rashmi Kafari to introduce our second